शलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मायं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरून् श्रीयुतापतकमलम् श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवंश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवम् साद्वैतं स्वावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवम् श्रीराधा कृष्ण पादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितंश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपीश गोपिका कान्ता राधा कान्ता नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यः सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण
Krishna Krishna Hare Hare
हरे राम 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 हरे हरे।
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat
Hare
pranam. Please accept our humble obeisances. Prabhuji, I sincerely apologize for today's link.
It happens, Mataji. It's okay.
That link is totally cancelled from my computer, so I do not know what happened. I've set up a new link now. So
Okay.
let's hope that that works. Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, we are reading the Bhagavad Gita as it is. We are on chapter 13. Chapter 13 is called The Nature Enjoyer and the Consciousness. And today we are on 13, text 13. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I hand over.
Yes, I'll read the Sanskrit and you can read the purport.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Gneyam yat tat pravakshyami yat gnatvam ashnute anadi matparam brahma na sat tad na shaduchyate. Translation by His Divine Grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
Okay.
I shall now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. Mother, you can read the purport.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
The Lord has explained the field of activities and the knower of the field. He has also explained the process of knowing the knower of the field of activities. Now, he begins to explain the knowable, first the soul and then the supersoul. By knowledge of the knower, both the soul and the supersoul, one can relish the nectar of life. As explained in the second chapter, the living entity is eternal. This is also confirmed here. There is no specific date at which the jiva was born. nor can anybody trace out the history of Jivatma's manifestations from the Supreme Lord. Therefore, it is beginless. The Vedic literature confirms this. Najayate mriyate va kad vipasit Katha Upanishad 1.2.18. The knower of the body is never born and never dies, and he is full of knowledge. The Supreme Lord of the Supersoul is also stated in the Vedic literature, Shvetashvara Upanishad 6.16, to be Pradhana Kshetrajana Patir Kunesha, the chief knower of the body and the master of the three modes of material nature. In the Smriti, it is said, Dasa Bhuta Harer Eva Nan Yasyava Kadachana. The living entities are eternally in the service of the Supreme Lord. This is also confirmed by Lord Chaitanya in his teachings. Therefore, the description of Brahman mentioned in this verse is in relation to the individual soul, and when the word Brahman is applied to the living entity, it is to be understood that he is Vigna Brahman as opposed to Ananda Brahman. Ananda Brahman is the Supreme Brahman, personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mother. So we have read at length in the verses from 8 to 12, at least 19 items, which are called knowledge. And Krishna declares it at the end that anything out of this is called ignorance. Knowledge is within these 19 items. And the verse for today speaks about the spirit soul, Atma. So if you read the purport very nicely, you'll find that even before reading the purport, we should have the preview of what we have read from the beginning. When the chapter began, Arjuna asked 6 questions. What is Prakriti, Purusha, Kshetra, Kshetragna, Jnana, Gneyam? I'll just give you briefly the meanings of them. Prakriti means material nature. Purusha means enjoyer. Enjoyer means Krishna. Kshetra means the field of activities. Kshetragna is the soul. And another Kshetragna is the super soul. And the 5th question was Jnana, knowledge, which Krishna gave briefly from 4 verses, 8 to 12. So many things, starting from Anamitam, Adambitvam, Ahimsa, and so on. And Gneyam means knowable. If you know what is spirit or the spirit soul and the supreme soul, then there is nectar in life, without which there can be no real happiness in life. So this verse, Sri Prabhupada explains that this body is filled of activities. So many activities go on in these activities. Many times we know that how so many changes happen in the body, how our moods change as affected by the 3 modes of nature, how is our perception, how our senses perceive things, how it is deposited in the mind, and how the mind acts. So it's good to have knowledge. And when Krishna explains all the knowledge, it's very clear that once you have knowledge, then how to act is upon you. So Sri Prabhupada says that the field of the activities and the knower of the activities has already been explained. I gave you earlier an example, which Sri Prabhupada quotes, of a farmer. A farmer, he knows his land very well. He knows every part of his land because he's the owner. But Krishna is the owner of all the farms. In other words, Krishna knows what is happening in everyone. And that's why it's called the supernova, which is the next verse, which is going to explain. But for the time being, the subject matter of this particular verse is Gneyam. So both verse 13 and 14 is going to explain knowable. See, Jnana means knowledge, Gneyam means knowable. What are we supposed to know? Just like, let's say you get an admission in the university, and generally in most universities on the first day or before the university start, they'll call the students and the parents and tell them that you should know what your child is going to do, and you should know what is around the school. They call it intuition. In this way, Gnay means to understand what is going on in this body and what is the cause and how the body is giving different effects because of the soul inside. So when you have that knowledge, it means that is called Gnayam. And this Gnayam, as we understand later, we understand that the Jiva, or the knowledge, Gnayam means the soul, is Anadi. Anadi means since time immemorial. This soul has come into the material existence. Nobody can trace out the history of the soul coming here. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says this in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Anadi Kala, that nobody, Anadi Bahirmukha Krishna Bhuli Gela. When a living entity forgets Krishna, he comes here. And one cannot know how long he has come here. And if you remember in the second chapter, there's a very famous verse, Na jayate mirate va kadachin, Nayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuya, ajanitya sashata purano, na hanyate hanyamane sharire. That verse is very much same like Katha Upanishad. Katha Upanishad says, Na jayate miryate va vipashit. Vipashit means the soul is full of knowledge. So really speaking, understanding the soul, or when you come to know the soul is full of knowledge. I don't know if many of you, or maybe any one of you, have heard the story of King Chitraketu. Anybody has heard the story? Anybody? Okay, Path Prem.
Yes,
Okay. So I'll tell you briefly the story of King Chitraketu, because it is related with this particular verse. You'll find that there was a certain king called Chitraketu, and this King Chitraketu had many, many wives, but there was one problem: he had no children, and he used to be unhappy because he used to think, if I leave my body, who is going to take over the throne, or who is going to rule over the subjects, which is natural for any good king. And he was a good king. Now it so happened that once he was visited by a sage called Angira. He's a very powerful sage. When Angira came in, he met the king, and the king welcomed him very nicely, gave him a nice seat, washed his feet, and welcomed him very nicely. And the Angira Muni asked the king that, how is your kingdom going on? Is everything okay? Because every kingdom has at least 7 extensions, limbs. It's called limbs of the kingdom. For example, the praja. Praja means the citizens, and the neighbors, the treasury, the army, and so on. And the king replied, everything is fine, and kingdom is going on very well. So Angira Muni asked him a very sarcastic question, that how come you don't look happy? And the king also is very wise. He also replied in a sarcastic way, that yes, you know why I'm not happy. Now the conversation went further. The sage said that in your case, you're not meant to become a father. Just like a farmer, when he tills the ground and puts the seeds, not all the seeds are going to sprout. Others fail. In your case, all the seeds have gone fail. In other words, you cannot become a father. Now the king was quite learned in the scriptures, and so the king said, King Chitraketu, he said, but you are a sage, you are a devotee of Krishna, and devotees are more powerful than the Lord himself, because the devotees will also, Krishna will always listen to the prayers of the devotee. So whatever you do, please give me only one son or one child. And the sage could understand that he is very much in need of a son. She told the the king, to listen very attentively. Yes, you will have a son, but listen very carefully. This son is going to give you a lot of happiness. And the same son is going to give you a lot of distress. A lot of happiness, a lot of distress. So he said, okay, King became very happy. King, his imagination started thinking that if I don't get a son, if I get a son, he will bring me a lot of happiness. That is what I'm asking for. And maybe the son may become crazy or mad, or maybe he may not listen to me. So maybe that is the unhappiness. He tried to estimate the distress in his own way. So it happened further that after 9 months, one of the queens called Kritaduti, she gave birth to a marvelous son, very beautiful son. And as soon as the son appeared, the whole kingdom was full of happiness. The king became very, very joyful. He decorated the kingdom so nicely. And all the citizens became very, very happy. And the days went by. Now, as the day went by, what happened is the other queens, they held a meeting, and they became envious of Kritaduti. Kritaduti is the queen who gave birth to the son. And the son was also named Harsha Shoka. Harsha means happiness, Shoka means distress. Now the queens, when they got together, the other queens, they held a meeting. He says, since this Kritaduti has become the mother, she's become favorite of the king. The king doesn't even look at us. So they became like envious. It's natural that, especially among ladies, that when they don't get their share, they become angry, and they express it in this way. So they held a meeting, and they said that we should destroy Kritaduti. We should kill Kritaduti. So the king will start looking at us. But another queen said, no, it's not her fault. The fault is the son. Since the day he has arrived, the king has become like, we have become unfavorite queens of the king. So let's finish the son. At that time, the son must be around 1.5 years old. So while he was sleeping at night, they prepared poison and fed the child poison. Now, for a small infant, you put little poison, it's gone. And the child died. Next morning, when the maid came, she noticed that the body of the son was cold and the eyes were looking up. And she realized that he's gone. And she could not control herself, so she screamed so loud that the queen came running. What's wrong? They said, look at your son. Something is wrong. The queen touched, even she could understand the son is gone. And the queen started crying and crying. All the queens came there, even the king came there running. Now, according to Vedic culture, the king should never appear in front of others in a sad mood or without wearing his crown, because king is the representative of God in the Vedic culture, and the king brings about courage and happiness to people. So on that day, he didn't even wear his mukut. Without his crown, he just came there. And he stood next to the cot where the baby was dead, and he also started crying. So the whole kingdom was unhappy that a son came, but lasted very short. In this way, crying went on, and the king was also crying. Generally, men don't cry in front of women, they cry privately. But he could not control himself, because if a man cries in front of his wife, the wife will become more weak. She needs protection, and she'll feel, now who is going to protect me? Even my husband is crying. So it's not right for a husband to cry or the king to cry in front of the queen. But he could not control himself. And while he was crying and crying, two sages came there. Now this time, one of them was Narad Muni. The other one was Angira Muni, the one who had given him the benediction. Both appeared. And now when the king saw these two sages, the sages came closer. And one of the sages said, why are you crying so much? Don't you remember what I had told you? He said, yes, I do remember that this son will give me all the happiness, and he gave me all the happiness. And this is the same son who is giving me all the distress. That's why it's Harsha and Shoka. But I did not know that he will leave me so soon. Now the king is very wise. He holds the feet of Angira. He says, if you can give me a son, you can even make my son alive. Even if you make him alive for a few minutes, I'm not going to cry. And Angira said, that is not possible. Your son has gone very far. What you are seeing is the dead body. Narad Muni said, what if I bring the son back? Because Narad Muni is very powerful. He said, if the son only calls me Papa, enough, or Daddy, whatever it is, or Pitashri. So Narad Muni by his powers, he brought the son back alive. But he told the king, he's only going to be alive for a matter of minutes, and he'll go back to sleep. And the son stood up within the court. And as the son Kota stood up, the king felt very happy, relieved, oh, my son is woken up. Of course, he knows within his mind that not very long, but he at least, he saw his son alive. So he's telling the son, don't you remember me? I'm your father. This is your mother. And all these are your mothers. Because other queens, they realized the mistake they made. Even they were lamenting now. And others may be crying, what do you call crocodile tears, means crying uselessly. So in this way, now when the son woke up, he did not speak anything for a few minutes. Time was just going and going. And at last he spoke up. What did he say? You should listen to the words. I don't know if I was your son, because I have taken many, many births. And in every birth, I had a mother and a father. In some, I didn't have, but I have changed my body so many times. And what do you want from me? If you say you are my father and mother, could be, I am not denying it, but I can't remember anything. After saying this, the son went to sleep. And before he went to sleep, he even told the king, let me go. And in a matter of minutes, maybe 15, 20 minutes, the son went to sleep again. Again, it became a corpse, a dead body. Seeing this, the king became completely detached. And he could understand that what you call this body or the byproducts of the body is nothing but an illusion. Those who remember the verse in the second chapter, the very famous verse, Dehi no ashmin yatha dehe komaram jovanam jara tatha dehantra prapti dhirashtatra namuyati. Within this deha, within this body, there is a dehi. Dehi means a living entity. The body undergoes 6 changes. And at the time of death, it leaves the body and goes to another body. Those who are wise, they do not lament. So, if you understand this verse thoroughly, this body undergoes 6 changes, and the king could understand very well that already the 6 changes have gone and this boy has already left. And now I understand the truth. The truth is that this body is asat and the soul is sat. Why am I lamenting? And the king at once left the kingdom, giving his kingdom to someone who was trustworthy. And he went to the forest. And in the 5th or 6th day, he actually saw the Supreme Lord eye to eye. So this is a story you should read. It appears in the 6th canto. I think it appears after the story of Ajamila. Worth reading because all the knowledge which is given therewith, very, very useful. Now, before he went to the forest, there's a very powerful knowledge spoken by Narad Muni and also Angira Muni. And he gives a very good example that if you go to a beach near the ocean, you see people making castles, sand castles. And these sand castles, you can make them even very big, as much as you, because there's enough sand. But how long does the sand castle stay? As soon as the wave comes in or the tide comes in, it will take the castle away. So if you study a sand castle, it's made up of millions and millions of sand granules. They come together and they get dispersed. Similarly, in a family, everyone comes together and everyone gets separated. Now, why did I tell you this story? That in this particular verse, which Prabhupada quotes from Katha Upanishad, it's not Katha, it's Katha Upanishad. Katha Upanishad says, Na jayate mirati va vipashit. In the Bhagavad Gita, it said, Na jayate mirate va kadachin. But here it says vipashit. Vipashit means the soul is full of knowledge. Now, when this child stood up, at once he said that I don't know how many parents I had. I don't recall how long I have been taking bodies. And I'm already on a journey to take another body. Why are you stopping me? So if you hear this, it's an evidence that the soul within us is full of knowledge. And if you understand the soul, then it's nectar. Why? Sri Prabhupada explains that Krishna is full of joy. Anandmaya abhyasat. Anandam is full of bliss. The soul actually is full of happiness because it is full of knowledge. He knows what is eternal and what is not eternal, what is sat, what is asat. So when you have this knowledge, then you actually understand the reality of the life. Then you can choose the path of happiness or distance yourself. And of course, the path of happiness is to accept the path of Krishna consciousness or bhakti. By bhakti, one will always remain happy, which will be explained in the 14th chapter. In the 14th chapter, Krishna explains to Arjuna the 3 modes of nature. But towards the end of the chapter, he says that one who knows these 3 modes of nature and has full knowledge of them, he can even live a very happy life, even in this material life, even in this material body. So though we have this material body, we should know that how much the 3 modes of nature are working on us. And this was one of the questions by Arjuna. I'll repeat the questions for you. As you start these chapters, there are 6 questions, all in one line. What is nature? What is enjoy? These are 2 questions. What is field of activities and who are the knower? The field of activities and the knower of the body. Then what is knowledge and what is knowledgeable? These are the 6 prime questions asked in the beginning. So keeping these questions always in the mind, and if you read this chapter, it becomes easy to read this chapter. And for your information, this verse number 30, the very powerful word here is Brahma. Brahma means the soul. Now, if you go back even to the 8th chapter, then you find that there also, one of the questions, I think one of the first questions asked by Arjuna is, Kim Tad Brahma? Brahma means, what is Brahma? And even in there, Krishna gave the same answer. Brahma means the living entity, indestructible living entity, which means the soul. And even in this chapter, the same answer Krishna is giving. Brahma means the soul. Now, a good hint for you. Sometimes, if ever you meet a Mayavadi, of course, you should not stay away from them, because they confuse people with so much nonsense and foolish knowledge. They say Brahma and Parabrahma is the same. No. Brahma means the living entity, and Parabrahma means Paramatma or Krishna, or the representative of Krishna within every living entity. And these two are different. Towards the end of the purport, Sri Prabhupada says, when it says soul or Brahma is Vijnanamaya. Do you remember those 5 stages of consciousness I had given, I think, last Friday? If I'm not wrong, the first consciousness is, if you are too attached to only eating food, it's called Annamaya, sorry. Most of us, when we are born, we try to touch everything with our mouth, with our tongue. No, very common. And we like to eat everything. Even if a pencil is given to you, you have a habit of chewing it, because you enjoy chewing. That is called Annamaya. Pranamaya means you understand different kind of jivas, life symptoms. Jnanamaya means you understand you have the thinking power, feeling power, and a willing power. And Vijnanamaya means you have the knowledge of Brahma, knowledge of the soul. So that is called Vijnanamaya, which is opposite of Anandamaya. Anandamaya means Krishna, full of bliss. If you recall Sri Prabhupada, and there is a painting in Bhagavad Gita also. There's a tree and 2 birds are there. There's a bird enjoying fruit. The other bird is just watching. Now the one who is enjoying the fruit all the time, that is called Jiva. And one who is watching only is called Paramatma. Now the one who is tasting the fruit is actually undergoing the suffering brought by karma, because he's enjoying the taste. Fruit is either sweet or sour. That's why our karma sometimes is sweet, sometimes is sour. Whereas the other one is not affected at all, because he's not tasting the fruit. But he is the witness, the superseer. In the verses to come, more knowledge will be given about Paramatma. How Paramatma acts. Just in fact, the next verse, 14 says, everywhere are his hands, legs, eyes, heads, faces, ears, everywhere. In this way, the Supersoul exists. So one may wonder, oh, can Supersoul within my heart see everything and within everyone? Yes. The Supersoul is capable of understanding pains, pleasures of everyone, whereas your soul is able to understand pain and pleasure of only your body. So that's why it's called Vijnana Brahma, and that one is called Ananda Brahma. The Supersoul is not affected by all this. Supersoul is just a seer, witness. And not only that, he's also the source of your senses. He knows your past, your present, and even he knows your future. That is the difference. So that means he's a supernova and we are only the knower. So this is a simple meaning of this purport. Those who are making notes, they can mark this particular verse number 13 is reference to Jivatma, not Paramatma. The next verse is Paramatma. But this particular verse, in which I repeat the verse, he says, I shall now explain the knowable. Knowable means Atma, knowing which you'll taste the eternal, because Atma is eternal. Brahma, the spirit, or in other words, the spirit soul. Beginningless, it has no beginning, because Anadi means since time memorial the soul has been there. It is subordinate to Krishna. Lies beyond the cause and effect of this material body. It means it comes, it keeps changing the body over and over again and again. And when it gets liberation or he takes up Krishna consciousness, he goes back home, back to Godhead, and then his real body is given to him, which is an eternal body, and he can enjoy himself forever in Vaikuntha. So I'll end up here. Hare Krishna. Any questions if you have, you can ask.
Hare Krishna, kindly unmute and ask your questions. Prabhuji, sorry, I know you have explained it, but I am not very clear about Gneya. So
It's
I
not
don't want
Gneya. Okay, Gneyam.
Gneyam.
Gneyam, yeah. Just go to your first verse again. First verse of the chapter, where it starts. You see the first verse. You'll try to understand. I'll speak the Sanskrit and I'll give you also. Arjuna Vacha. Prakritim Purusham Chaiva. That means what is Prakriti? What is Purusha? Khetram Khetragana. What is Khetra? Khet is Khetragana. Etad Veditum Ichhami. This is what I want to know. Jnana and Gyanam. So you see the words, two words, Jnana and Gneyam. Jnana means knowledge. Jnana means knowledgeable, worth knowing. So these are the questions asked by Arjuna in the very first chapter, very first verse. And Krishna has already replied in the verse number 2. He says, this body, O son of Kunti, is called the field. One who knows this body is called the knower, the field. It means this body is called Ketra. One who knows the body is called Ketraganam. Now the answer continues in verse number 3. It says, Ketraganam chapi mavvidi. Sarva Ketreshu bhakta. Ketra Ketraganayo jnanam tad jhach jnanam matam mamam. O sign of Bharata, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies, and to understand this body and its knower is called knowledge, jnana. So you can mark that word, jnana, here. And when you go further, what is gneyam is in the verse number 5 and 6. So questions and answers. So Krishna gives the answer about gneyam, especially in the verse of today, 13, which is the first part, that what is the soul. In the verse number 14, Krishna is again going to speak about gneyam, what is super soul. So jnana, gneyam. Is it okay, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you. Gneyam.
Okay.
Sandhya Mataji has a question. Kindly unmute and ask your question, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, and Hare Krishna, all devotees. Prabhuji, I just want to ask, the soul is, I'm just going from back previous knowledge. The soul, when it is in a body, we don't remember our actual origin because we are covered by Maya. But when we are dying and the soul is, say, released from this body, at that time, do we remember everything before we go in a different body? Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
No, we don't remember everything. When it's changing the body, we do not remember anything. But we may remember only important things, like what you've done the most, you may remember. For example, if you're a devotee all of your life, or even short time in your life, then by mercy of Krishna, if you remember your energy used to serve Krishna, which is called bhakti or devotional service, if you remember that, then that will be your last birth. But besides bhakti, whatever you remember, according to the karma of that particular body, you'd be taken to the next body. After a very short time, there's another body waiting for you. So it's not that you'll remember all the births. No. You may remember a few things. At least the summary of your life can be remembered. If you are engaged in devotional service, of course, the summary of your life will be that, yes, you are dedicated your life to serve Krishna. Or at least you try to serve Krishna, which is good enough. But if let's say you are too much attached to material life, which naturally all of us, 99.9% of people are attached to material life. And material life means things related to eating, sleeping, mating, defending. So many things in our life, happiness, distress, people will trouble you, people will give you happiness, how much you have suffered, all those will come in the form of a summary. And even after doing all that, whatever desire is left in your mind and whatever envy is left in your mind will decide your next body. That's why if you go to the, there's a verse, Ichha Dvesha Samutena Sarge Chanti Parantapa. There's a verse in Bhagavad Gita, I think is in the 9th chapter. I think 9th or 7th chapter. I'm a bit confused. So yeah, it is 7th chapter. Ichha Dvesha Samutena. So whatever Ichha and Dvesha is left in this body, even while dying, will decide your next body. Is it clear, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji.
So in other words, we can learn from here, from that particular Ichha Dvesha, that even if you have Ichha means desires, better connect your desires with Krishna. There's nothing wrong. Nobody can live without desires. We need desires. But if your desires are connected with Krishna, you're in a safe position. And when you say Dvesha, as you practice in Krishna consciousness, especially by chanting and hearing, then even this Dvesha goes away. We all have Dvesha. But by hearing about Krishna, that envy is uprooted and thrown away from our heart. So if you clear these two things, then there's no rebirth. And if little is left, you'll take another birth, but in a devotee's family. And that will be your last life. Okay?
Okay, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Thank
Nice,
you, Prabhuji.
intelligent question. Good question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I have a question.
Yes.
I know what you explained. I didn't listen to your lecture from the beginning. But if I just read the text on its own and the next text, 14, without the purport, I would have considered Brahman to be the unmanifested form, because it seems that text 13 says, I shall now explain so Brahman, the spirit, and then the 14 is just explaining that. I would have followed, like that. But without the purport, I would not have understood it in that way, and I still find it difficult to understand. I know what Prabhupada is saying, but I have to think quite a lot to understand, why he's saying Brahman like that. Yeah, that's just my realization, Prabhu.
Okay.
It's not a question. It's just a difficult.
It's your realization, your understanding. Yeah.
It's just
okay. Now, why Srila Prabhupada is given us purpose? Because we do get confused even after understanding the verse. Yes, you are right. The verse is Brahma, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me. So if you use a bit of logic, it says Brahma, the spirit. Spirit means soul is a spirit. Beginningless, the soul has no beginning. Anadir. Anadir Kala means nobody knows since how long the soul has been created. Nobody knows. The soul which is even within you or within me. And it's subordinate to me. That means here Brahma means subordinate to Parabrahma. Krishna is Parabrahma.
But
So if you understand the verse in that way, still it refers to the soul. And if you go to the 8th chapter, 7 questions asked by Arjun, the very first question is Brahma, Kim Brahma. Kim means what is Brahma? And Krishna clearly says the soul or you. You means us. So if you are reading even just the verses, still the answer is the same. But Srila Prabhupada is so kind. If you go to the second last line of the second purport, it says, therefore the description of Brahma mentioned in this verse is in relation to the individual soul. Prabhupada says like that here, very clearly in the purport. And when the word Brahma is applied to the living entity, it is understood to be Vijnana Brahma. Vijnana Brahma means it is full of knowledge. When one has knowledge of the spirit soul, that is called Vijnana Brahma, which is opposed to Ananda Brahma. Ananda Brahma means full of happiness, which is Krishna. We are not full of happiness, though we are meant to be full of happiness. But since we have come to this material world, we are Vijnana Brahmas. That means what even knowledge can bring us happiness. At least knowledge by knowledge or logic, we understand that we are meant to be happy, not meant to be sad. Okay, Prabhuji?
Yeah, thank you. I just have to.
Yeah, you have to read the purport again.
Yes, I have to read it a few times and meditate on
Yes,
that.
yes.
And refer to the other chapter, chapter 8, you said, isn't it?
Yes, chapter 8, the 7 questions there and 6 questions in this chapter.
I'll have to.
Yeah, in fact, that one becomes 7 and also 1. Who can remember Krishna at the time of that? This was one of the questions in that particular chapter. And Krishna gives the answer.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
It's good to read the purports and sorry. I myself, if you ask me, if I was in your shoes, I mean, when I used to read Bhagavad Gita in the beginning, I always used to find 13th chapter not just difficult, but I used to find it very boring. Nothing would go in my head. It's only after hearing from many, many devotees that now I understand 13th chapter.
Yes.
And explain it to others. Otherwise, I used to find that 13th chapter the most boring chapter. But actually, it looks boring, but it's very technical, very, very technical. So many details are given in this chapter. But having understood this chapter, you will not be confused in your life. You know what is happening, why you have suffered. I mean, where you made your mistake in your consciousness. At least you see other people where they are doing, where their opinion is wrong, where their perception is wrong. All those answers will come to you if you understand the 13th chapter. And if you happen to be one of those, I don't know if you know, what do you call them? Sajanand Swami, there's Swaminarayan people, Swaminarayan?
Yeah.
They have a famous book called Vachanamrita. Now, if you read Vachanamrita, it is all of 13th chapter.
Okay. The other thing I just wanted to add, the impersonal manifestation is also often referred to as the spirit.
Yes.
So that is quite,
Yes, if you compare it in that way,
confusing.
Brahma means impersonal. You are right. But in context, the Brahma means the soul.
Okay. All right.
The Brahma which you are talking about is the Bhagavatam show. Vadanti tattvas tatam vidvam yad jnanam tat avyayam brahmeti bhagwaniti bhagwaniti sabhyate. In that verse of Bhagavatam, Brahma refers to impersonal Brahma. Paramatma means localized. Bhagavan means Supreme Personality. You got it, Krishna? You're right.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
I think Shilpesh Prabhu wanted to ask something or what? Oh, okay. Anybody has a question then?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you very much for your class. Prabhuji, one thing is that we cannot till yet we have we have a confusion. Like one is the Kshetra or Kshetrajna, that we understand, and there are two Kshetrajna. One is Atma and one is Paramatma. So Atma only we can understand what is the feeling, happiness and distress in our body, but not the other.
One body only.
Yeah, particular one body. But the super soul, Paramatma, knows everyone's what is happened in his body or mind.
Yes,
so
you're right.
Yes, Prabhu. So now the point is that the Atma comes from the Paramatma, and there is not difference. So why this difference? What knowing it, everything, because Atma is not material; it is spiritual, and it is part of a super soul. Then why not he understand everybody's? How he is supposed to be dominant in the bodily atmosphere?
Okay, Atma, because it has accepted the material body. Paramatma is only accompanying the Atma. Paramatma knows everything. Atma does not know everything. Atma is Anu. Anu means very tiny. Paramatma is Vibhu, very big. We all know that Atma is 1 to the 10,000 size, the tip of the air. Paramatma,
Yes.
Sri Prabhupada mentions that is almost 8 inches. If you stretch your thumb to the middle finger like that, you measure it is approximately 8 inches in an adult. So if you compare that with 1 to the 10,000, even by size, there is a big difference. So qualitatively we are same, but quantitatively there's a huge difference. Prabhupada says we are like a drop of the ocean, and Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or Paramatma, is like the whole ocean. That's why Paramatma is a supernova, and whereas we are only a knower. That's why earlier I gave the example, Prabhupada gives the example in the first 1 or 2 verses of this chapter. He gives the example of a farmer and the king. A farmer only knows his farm. A king knows all the farms in the country.
Yes.
Is it okay? Partha?
Yeah, yeah. Yes.
Though
Prabhuji.
both are spiritual,
Both
but
are
the size,
spiritual.
one is tiny and one is big.
Big. Yes.
So one who is big has a bigger vision, whereas one who is tiny is limited. We are only limited in this body. For example, I am in Nairobi. You are in Eldoret, okay? If I
Yes.
pinch my hand here, you feel pain in your hand?
No.
You feel pain in your body? No.
No.
Whereas a Paramatma can know, but your soul cannot know what is happening in me. What is in my heart, I know. You do not know what is in my heart.
Yes.
That is the difference. That's why they say that those who are not devotees, they have a dual mind. Dual mind means they may be speaking something and within their heart something else is going on. They are not truthful, whereas devotees are truthful.
Mhm. Thank you, Prabhuji.
That's why two never become one. Soul and super soul never become one. They always remain separate. I don't know whether it was in the last class I gave you the example of the fingers. These 2 fingers never become one. They always remain separate. Even the height of the fingers or the length of the fingers never become one. Even when you grow up, these fingers do not become. Even this will remain long. This will always become short, remain short. Okay?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. All right. Any more questions? It's already 9 now in Nairobi,
Yes.
Kenya.
Hare Krishna. I'll hand over to Path Prabhuji.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji, for your class and giving your time, Prabhu. We are so thankful for your regularly giving your time, precious time to us. We are so grateful. Also, I thanks to all the devotees who joined here. I request all the devotees, please unmute yourself and a glorification for the chanting Hare Krishna mantra for a glorification of His Grace, Rukma Prabhuji. Please join.
Hey,
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna,
Hare
Krishna, Hare
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Ram,
Ram,
Rama
Hare
Hare Rama,
Hare
Rama Rama Hare
Hare
Hare.
Hare.
Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha, kripa sindhubhaiv cha,
पतितानां
Vishnu Namo Namah.
Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai,
रुक्मा प्रभु की जय.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. I'm ending the session.